Thank you. Our speaker today, Kai Miller, is a non-binary social worker and therapist. Kai is also the Director of Community Impact at Light Source, a group therapy practice, and founder of Align, an education, training, and consultation program that enhances providers' competencies in serving LGBTQ+ clients. Kai's social activism regarding the rights and humanity of the LGBTQ+ community spaces spans nearly 3 decades. Particularly relevant given the current political climate, Kai also consistently participates in policy change efforts at the local and state levels to ensure gender-expansive individuals experience inclusion and celebration across the lifespan. Please join me in welcoming Kai to the stage.
Her name was Kim. She was raised by a single dad with 2 brothers in Boise, Idaho during the 1980s, during the AIDS epidemic. It was a scary place to be a young gay kid. But she had her older brother who was her idol. She borrowed his clothing. She mirrored his sports. If he went skiing, she wanted to go too. He got into photography. She picked up a camera. He played hockey. She wanted to play hockey. But she hated her name. She tried changing the spelling to K-I-M-M, K-Y-M. Sorry to the couple people along the way who had those names tattooed on them. They were ever changing. There were times that Kim carved her name in furniture or even on herself out of anger. She loved George Michael, got in trouble at the babysitter's house for singing like a virgin on the trampoline, sang Whitney Houston day in and day out between the 4th and 5th grade summers. Her expression was fluid. It sometimes depended on what clothing was available from her older brother. She would sneak shirts out of his dirty laundry hamper and wait until she got to school and change into them. At times, wearing dresses felt okay. Upon reflection and many years of therapy, she realized that the motivation was approval-seeking. So in those times where wearing a dress felt okay, it was because she would get to see her dad's face light up at how she presented herself. She was daddy's girl, the only girl in the household for several years, and performing femininity was a way to receive love and approval. Kim, like many people, was given a role to fulfill. Her mom taught domestic duties to no fault of her own. She was raised in the 50s. She looked at the women around her in Southern California, where long hair and big boobs and lots of makeup was the standard. And she tried really hard to replicate that. But nothing ever seemed like it fit. All the guys were going fishing. She would want to go too, but was told no. So she was left to kind of do the things with the girls that she didn't really enjoy doing, like getting nails done and shopping and maybe sitting around and gossiping. It wasn't her thing. As time advanced, she was forced to find stable footing amidst the no place to belong. She attempted to come out. She became unhoused, kicked out of her house at the age of 16. She was ridiculed by her friends for being different. And all of these instances, all of these life experiences added layers on top of who she really was. By the time she was 19, she became a single mom to twin girls. She was told to get it together. And she had to figure out what that meant. She was told that her kids would hate her, that she would damage them, that she would have no relationship with them if she came out. She didn't have one person who stood by her side telling her or conveying safety in any way that it would be okay to be who you are in this space. Kim was a mask created and served as the price of admission to many of the relationships that she wanted entrance to. As a result, she subjected herself to conversion therapy, also known as sexual orientation and gender identity change efforts. For 10 years, she went to church on Sundays, and at the end of the service, when they asked, like, who are the extra sinners, do you need extra prayer, you can go back to the room every Sunday, she raised her hand and went to the back room and tried to pray the gay away. Over time, though, it became unbearable. So she found small places to express what she felt on the inside, and usually that was through athletics and the outdoors. She could dress however she wanted when she was playing tennis, even if she was the only one in a small Utah town showing up in black with tattoos, where all of the other women at the tennis court were dressed in white and like perfect hair. She still found comfort in being in those spaces. She found comfort in being able to wear hiking pants and hiking shoes, and spent an entire summer exploring her gender identity in the mountains of Utah. The thing that she shoved down deeply existed, and it was screaming for a place to exist. Kim wound up in a confluence of binary opposition that ultimately resulted in re-adolescing to Kai. So asking to play hockey, getting to dance. Some of those are my brother's shirts. The Boise one is mine. This picture is when Kim initially started the sexual orientation and gender identity change efforts. And over the years, she attempted to do all of the domestic duties that her mom had passed on to her. So black, white, good, evil, right, wrong, he, she, him, her, all viewed through a lens of superiority, even and especially blue and pink. Binary is a system of two. It's a structuralist concept, right? But what we know now is that really what it is a tool of dominance. The gender binary was constructed to establish not only norms and ideas, but rules and expectations, and there are consequences if they're not followed. Make no doubt about it, this was strategic. Dominant groups are associated with more valued traits, and subordinate groups are associated with less valued traits. So this system creates these boundaries between groups, and it only makes sense in their opposites, whereas the lower valued trait carriers are subjected to social reduction. So as women, we're taught to be quieter, to take less space, to work in careers that nurture others. I'm a social worker. It's the lowest paying master's profession in existence because we are expected to do the work because we love it, and that's what we're called to do. These positions are less powerful than the positions that men carry in our society. Our time, energy, expertise, all of it has a lower value, a lower economic value, a lower social value, a lower emotional value. So we're not talking about just identity and expression, but a role in which we adhere to that's compulsory. We never consented. We are told this is the way that it is, and we're not given any other option, not even a notion that something else could exist. Over time, this creates a permeable violence to those who feel that incongruence. One of the greatest movements to dominate women was based on our breasts. It began with these naturalist arguments that our breasts were nature signs that women belong at home, nurturing babies. In the 1790s, this is the first time that we began to see breasts politicized to relocate the power of women. We were the original healers. We were the herbalists. We were the midwives. We were taking care of our societies. We were the doctors. We were the experts in the field of women. Systematically, our power was reassigned as values to domestic duties, and our role became the assumption of natural destination. This is what women are destined to do. Our whole role is to generate life. And if we can't see how that parallels today's politics, all of these years later, we're missing the big picture. This also parallels with the formation of structural racism. The rhetoric of what is natural cloaks a caste system that still exists today. Some examples: it's not natural to be intimate with somebody of the same sex and gender, or God made us only one way, or white people shouldn't marry black people. Nature is weaponized, although science has proven that all orientations and all genders and all shapes and sizes of relationships exist in the natural world. We choose to ignore science in the name of power. In a recent study, half of men, 46%, reported that women's equality movements cost them. We don't expect to achieve gender equality for 132 to 300 years from now, and that's a study that was published in 2015. I have no way of seeing how that has not been delayed further based on the setbacks to women's reproductive rights and the way that our medical system continues to fail us, wage gap disparities. So through these social confines, as these layers pile on, we know that these societal manifestations of gender become a significant barrier to self-actualization because we're burying our authenticity. Many of us don't even realize that what we're doing is taking parts of us and compartmentalizing them and leaving them at the door as the price of admission to the relationships that we seek. We recognize when we receive praise when we get it right. The time I came out in the 6th grade, dressed from head to toe, probably as feminine as I've ever looked in my life, a red and black dress, black tights. The obsession with black has been a moment, and as many of us know, is a hallmark of queer expression. But I saw the way my dad's eyes lit up, and that was the love that I sought. And all of this was done subconsciously. I had no awareness of this, because what language do you have at the age of 12 to express what's going on internally? How do you tell somebody, I experience an energy that doesn't feel like what I'm wearing right now? So even though many aspects of this were torture, having to sit to get my nails done, or feeling like I had to take time to curl my hair, spending 30 to 45 minutes a day trying to get it right, many times spending 2 to 3 hours crying in the bathroom before I have to step out the front door. It was all compulsory. I was not given an option of any other way. I was not given the developmentally appropriate space to explore who I was. And those who are socialized as girls and females particularly are taught to mask in such a complex, traumatizing way that we have no choice but to push down our authenticity as far as it will go. Sometimes we become profoundly isolated, and it can take some time to figure it all out. A lot of times we hear politicians talk about how all these kids are just confused. Well, yeah, they're confused because you've stripped them from any representation to where they may see themselves in someone else. I didn't realize that I was non-binary until 2016. I met a friend as I was becoming a therapist who was a non-binary therapist, and I was curious about what is that word non-binary. And this was the same summer that I spent in the mountains trying to figure out, am I a trans guy? Like, I don't like facial hair, and trans guys really like their facial hair. I don't think that's me. And I didn't feel like a man, but I also didn't feel like a woman, and I resented the fact that I had to show up and put on that mask every day. So I Googled non-binary, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. This is who I am. And this is why representation is so important. So that confusion that we experience is weaponized against us in the political system. Just saying all these kids are confused. It is our role to help them figure it out, to give them language, to give them the tools, to provide developmentally appropriate spaces to explore who they are without shame, without fear, and providing them with the sense of inclusion that we all deserve. So fast forward, it's been a few years since 2016. What a wild ride it's been. I now identify as a trans, non-binary, queer woman. Now, how does that all work? In 2016, I was still dressing the part. I was wearing the dresses, I was putting on the makeup, and I've seen Facebook posts since that time where I jokingly say, I don't know how to girl. I remember one time posting a picture of a makeup sponge, like, I don't even know how to use this thing, but I felt incredible pressure to do the things, so I was really trying to do the things, all occurring on a subconscious level. I did not consider myself transgender, though, because I hadn't felt like I transitioned. So fast forward a few years, we all barely survive an administration that was terrible to women and queer people and trans people. And one day I cut off my hair, and I threw away the makeup. And I only felt empowered to do that because as I was going through things, I found my ex-husband's ring, his wedding ring. And I had a thought, and it went something like this. I wish I could wear a ring like this. Why do I have to wear this diamond flowery thing that doesn't really seem to work for me? And it dawned on me that I could. Because at that point, I had had an opportunity to get all of the cisgender heterosexual men out of my orbit. And I realized that what I had been doing is performing this femininity for the gift of external validation about my worth as a human being. That day that I saw that ring and gave myself permission, I cleaned out my closet entirely. There wasn't a single thing left in it. Building a new wardrobe is expensive and a little bit stressful. Because if you're non-binary or gender-expansive and your body is that of a woman's, it's hard to find shoes that fit. It's hard to find button-down shirts that button and don't have gaps. It's hard to find pants that fit. And as we're navigating this tremendous difficulty and talking to our families and telling them how hard this is, they quit back with, you're just not looking hard enough. You need to shop more. It's a erasure of the challenges that we face in coming out. Then soon after that, I changed my name, and I've started some gender-affirming healthcare processes as well. As I sit now, I do look at my journey as a transition and now do consider myself transgender. Well, then how can I also still identify as a woman? Well, I love women. For many reasons. We're intelligent, we get things done the right way. We uphold our societies, we nurture and we love. And it's just not an identity I wanted to let go of. But sure enough, it did take me a lot of time to heal my relationship with being a woman. Because the authentic parts of me that I had stuffed down were finally coming up to breathe, and it didn't seem like there was room for both. So that part took me a little bit of time to figure out as well. I still have challenges claiming my identity. I had to grieve who I thought I was, and as I shedded Kim, I was able to eventually move through the shame and grief that I felt. Still pops up now and then. But it was almost as if I had to ritualize the death of this person I thought that I was, the one that was created to please others as the price of admission to exist. So what do I imagine for the future? Sounds a little bit like reorienting a moral compass from these capitalistic notions of productivity, profits over people, the binary. And it centers human beings as beings, spiritual, soulful beings, who are designed and deserve to flourish. They're not placed in boxes, that we're not placing these roles on people without a contingency plan. It's an expansion of human rights that feels ethically and compassionately holding of others and ourselves. We have an opportunity to allow people to be vulnerable. And when I'm working with clients, I will tell you that 9 times out of 10, my clients are not worried about being vulnerable. They're worried about how other people will handle that vulnerability. So when somebody deems you as safe enough to allow into their center circle and allows you to see their authenticity, please hold that vulnerability like you would something very fragile. Because in that moment, you have the ability to contribute to their sense of self-worth and their sense of belongingness, which is something that we're all wired for. We also have the opportunity to engage community-based activism to help create that sense of belongingness. Because what has happened over the last several years is we're all existing through technology. Our sense of connectivity a lot of times is through Facebook, Instagram, and we become isolated. So where we used to exist in community spaces, and we had a lot of just naturally occurring opportunities to be in proximity of other human beings, we've lost some of that. And what a lot of queer folks are doing after they come out and they look around and their family and friends are gone is they're creating their own chosen family. And so we can help them create that sense of belongingness. We also look at scientific advancement that's helped us see the value in gender-affirming healthcare, as well as behavioral health, family system improvements. All of these things contribute to what we know is a longer life expectancy because we are not systematically traumatizing people. We also have the opportunity to preserve human dignity. I came out to my friend. She was actually the first girl that I kissed in the 3rd grade. The Sherlock kids were a little unwieldy, and we were always causing a little trouble in the neighborhood. Our relationship spanned almost 3 decades. And when I came out to her and I told her that I was non-binary, she said, "There's no such thing as that. There's only 2 genders." And I was placed in the position where I was saying, I'm standing right in front of you. The denial of our existence is nothing new, right? If we politicized women's bodies, we now know that we can politicize trans bodies. And make no mistake, these representatives who are voting against our rights to participate in sports, to have queer culture through drag, and to be able to have access to gender-affirming healthcare that saves lives, they know what they're doing is wrong. They will go to the Democrats after these hearings and let them know, I know this is terrible, but if I don't vote this way, I'm going to get primaried. They have the opportunity to preserve human dignity. In rooms where not one person has shown up at any hearing and said, I've been harmed by gender-affirming healthcare, and you have rooms packed full of trans teens and their families and overflow rooms and people in hallways, and we're staying there until 3 a.m. and leaving and it's snowing out. And they have the opportunity to make a difference for the people it matters to the most, and they deny it. The first time I wore menswear in front of my family, I was laughed at. I've been asked about my clothing at hearings. Almost not allowed in a room because I was wearing a men's jacket. Some have asked me, why didn't you just say it was a women's jacket? Well, I was shocked. I was shocked that I was asked. And I'm a pretty honest person, so when I was asked where I got my jacket, was it in the men's or women's section? I said the men's section, and it became a big issue. It was humiliating and shouldn't have happened. I'm bathroom policed, more now since January than I ever have been in my life. I had 2 friends who received hate crimes last week. We see the long stares, we hear the whispers. Sometimes when I walk into a restaurant with my girlfriend, who's also androgynous in appearance, I can see the whole room get quiet and 30 glances our way. We notice the people who avoid using our names, who avoid using our pronouns. I notice what pictures people react to on social media. I recently found a hard drive of these conversion therapy days. So I was posting some pictures of me with my kids that brought me a lot of joy. And family members who have not liked or loved a single picture since I came out started liking and loving those pictures. And what's the message that that sends to me? That that version of me is acceptable and this one is not. And like, really, what's the difference to them? Because they're getting something out of this. To get their power. We don't talk about how humiliating it can be to re-add a less in front of an entire world watching. It's a really vulnerable place to be. At the root of this is the binary structure, right? That centers acceptance by the dominant culture of heterosexuality. That's what this is. But we get a chance to do things a little bit differently. We have an opportunity to deconstruct the binary, to divorce ourselves of implicit bias, to create a world where there's no standard definition for what it is to be a man or be a woman. We get to create space for us to define it ourselves. And we would exist just like they did in Schitt's Creek, where there's safety in showing people who we are without fearing rejection or igniting shame. It's really that easy. Instead of packing beautiful souls into capitalistic, sexist, homophobic boxes, we would then get to discover the purpose of being alive, which I firmly believe is simply to love. In this ideal world where I would love to see us headed, trans bodies would not be politicized as fodder to gut-wrenching power grabs. In this world that I envision, gender will no longer be a primary defining characteristic or a tool of oppression, and there would be a lot of flexibility in what we see as masculine or feminine. We would teach men that it's okay to be nurturers, it's okay to be soft, it's okay to feel. You are more than what we have told you can only be anger. We would allow women to show up in their full power and take space and breathe the oxygen that we have every inherent right to. So the result would be a profound and developed lived experience void of these social powers that have forcibly been taken by one group over others. We would have the possibility of wage gap closure, healthcare disparities would be remedied, and not only would we respect other experiences of gender, we would respect our own. We wouldn't evoke the trauma of creating compulsory gender assignments that force people to have funerals for the beings that they created to more safely navigate the world. We will no longer be forced to create alternative versions of ourselves in order to receive love and approval, and especially growing in the ability to love ourselves. Reconnecting with my own self-worth and love was a journey of epic proportions that spanned nearly 3 decades of unpacking and repairing. I saw therapists for 15, 20 years, and not one of them ever mentioned that some of the reactivity that I was having in my interpersonal relationships could be stemming from the trauma that I experienced as a queer human being who was forced to closet. And now, as I sit here before you today, I experience so much gratitude knowing that although I am now known as Kai, I will always carry with me a really special person, the one who kept me safe, who earned love, and worked so hard on my behalf, and her name was Kim. Thank you.